In the beginning, there was only the sea, endless, eternal, whispering the first songs of creation. From its heart, a flame was born, bright, defiant, alive. That flame took form, and the Sea King arose. Under his reign, Atlantis shone like a jewel beneath the waves, a kingdom of gods and dreamers, where knowledge rivaled the stars, and power flowed like tides. But pride is a storm that no shore can withstand. The heavens trembled, the ocean roared, and the city of light became a legend lost to time. Yet legends never die, they only sleep. Now, as the tides return and the world forgets its past, the deep remembers. The Sea King stirs once more. This is the beginning of the end and the rebirth of Atlantis. Atlantis rising, the epic myth of the lost kingdom beneath the waves. Welcome back to my channel. This channel specializes in writing about epic tales and myths from around the world. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to help me out. Today, we will dive into a story titled Atlantis Rising, the epic myth of the lost kingdom beneath the waves. Here is the detailed content. Chapter 1: The Birth of Atlantis. In the first age of the world, when fire and water still quarreled over dominion, the god Poseidon looked upon the chaos of the seas and felt an emptiness even the tides could not fill. The heavens belonged to Zeus, the underworld to Hades, but the oceans, boundless and deep, were his alone. And yet, amidst their endless song, he heard no laughter, no life that could mirror his heart. He searched through coral kingdoms and trenches darker than time, through tempests and the stillness beyond storms, until at last he found an island, small, perfect, untouched. It rose from the ocean like the first breath of creation, its peaks crowned with mist, its rivers whispering to the sea. Upon this island lived Cleito, a mortal woman of radiant spirit, daughter of Evenor, who was born of the earth itself. Her eyes mirrored the horizon. Her voice could calm the winds. Poseidon watched her with wonder. Unlike the goddesses of Olympus, she knew sorrow and joy in equal measure, and in her heart burned a longing, not unlike his own, to belong, to create, to love beyond divine loneliness. So the god of the sea rose from the depths in a chariot of silver dolphins, the waters parting before him. The earth trembled as he stepped upon the shore. Cleito, though afraid, did not flee. Instead, she looked upon him as one might look upon a storm, with awe, not fear. Poseidon spoke to her of the world's beginning, of the music that once bound land and sea, of the great silence that followed the wars of the gods. He promised her a kingdom beyond the reach of death, a realm that would be both mortal and divine. Cleito, her heart caught between dream and faith, accepted. From their union came 10 sons, each born beneath a different moon, each blessed by the tides themselves. The eldest, Atlas, shone brightest of all, tall, golden-eyed, his voice carrying the weight of destiny. Poseidon loved him above all others and decreed that the island should bear his name, Atlantis, the land of Atlas. Upon the central mountain, Poseidon raised walls of marble and orichalcum, the metal of the gods. Rivers of silver flowed through channels carved by his trident, and the air shimmered with divine light. Around the mountain, he shaped 3 rings of land and 2 of sea, so perfect in symmetry that even the stars envied their geometry. In the heart of this pattern, he placed a crystal, the heart of the ocean, glowing with a soft azure flame. It was both heart and soul, for it beat with Poseidon's own essence, binding the sea to the land forever. He then blessed his sons, dividing the realms among them. Atlas received the central island, where the crystal pulsed eternal. His brothers, Gadarus, Amphirs, Evamen, Menasius, Autochthon, Elasippus, Maester, Azaz, and Dioprepes ruled the surrounding lands and seas, each swearing allegiance to their elder. Together, they forged a covenant known as the Oath of Tides, vowing to preserve balance between God and man. For a time, harmony reigned. The sons of Poseidon built temples that shone like dawn upon the waves. They crafted machines of coral and bronze that could move through the sea like living things. Music filled the air, flutes of pearl, drums of shell, choirs echoing through chambers lit by bioluminescent gems. The gods watched from Olympus, both in awe and unease. "They have built perfection," said Hera, her eyes sharp with envy. "And perfection," murmured Athena, "is the seed of hubris." Poseidon, however, smiled. "Let them dream," he said, "for dreams are the language of creation." And so the golden age of Atlantis began. The people flourished under the gaze of their god King Atlas. Seas obeyed their will. Winds bent to their command. The Atlanteans learned to harness the crystal heart, using its energy to light cities and heal the wounded. No famine touched their shores. No sickness darkened their blood. To them, the ocean was not a barrier, but a road, a living bridge to the rest of the world. But even paradise is not free from shadows. Deep beneath the island, where the crystal heart rooted itself into the mantle of the world, strange tremors began to stir. Some priests claimed it was Poseidon's power growing restless. Others whispered it was the earth itself, jealous of the sea's beauty. Cleito, who grew old while Poseidon remained ageless, often gazed upon the horizon with worry. "Everything that is born of love," she said, "will one day be tested by loss." Her sons did not understand. They were too young, too bright, too certain that eternity could be built by their own hands. The night she died, the ocean fell utterly still. Poseidon stood alone atop the central mountain, the waves refusing to rise. As though in mourning, he pressed his trident into the heart of the ocean, releasing a tear of divine sorrow into its core. The crystal pulsed once brighter than ever, and from that moment on, the sea would forever carry her name in secret currents. Cleito's death marked the end of innocence. Poseidon returned to the depths, leaving his children to rule in his stead. Atlas ascended the throne, crowned with coral and light, and swore to uphold his father's law. Balance in all things, lest the sea devour what it has given. The people rejoiced, the temples sang, and the empire rose like a sun reborn. But in the depths, the ocean stirred once more, slow, patient, eternal, as if whispering to itself the fate that even gods could not undo. For the ocean, though it gives life, always remembers how to reclaim it. Chapter 2. The Golden Age of the Deep. The reign of Atlas, son of Poseidon, marked the beginning of an age so radiant that even the stars envied its brilliance. The ocean sang of peace, the wind whispered prosperity, and Atlantis, the city of rings, glowed like a sapphire upon the breast of the world. Under the rule of Atlas and his brothers, the island became a living miracle. The temples of Poseidon reached to the sky, crowned with orichalcum spires that shimmered brighter than gold. Gardens floated upon crystal waters, their blossoms nourished by sacred dew drawn from the sea itself. Bridges of silver connected each ring of land, and beneath them swam leviathans tamed by Atlantean hands, colossal guardians of coral and steel. Every dawn, the people gathered in the Hall of Tides, where the priests invoked the blessings of Poseidon. Their voices rose like waves, echoing through marble corridors as the crystal heart pulsed in rhythm with the sea. The air was thick with the scent of salt and light, a fragrance only gods could weave. Atlantis was not merely a kingdom, it was a living testament to harmony. Machines powered by divine energy moved across the streets, drawing strength from the crystal's endless song. Healing fountains cured the sick. Luminous orbs lit the cities without flame. No hunger gnawed at bellies, no shadow touched the soul. Even the storms avoided their shores, as though the heavens themselves bowed before the sons of Poseidon. Atlas ruled with both strength and wisdom. His voice could calm the sea or command armies with equal grace. His brothers, Guderus, Amenzius, and the rest, governed the outer lands, each loyal to the oath of tides. Together, they met beneath the great dome of crystal, swearing every year to keep the balance that bound them to both God and earth. Yet, as peace endured, ambition began to stir. It was Guderus, the second-born, who first spoke of expansion. "Why should the sea confine us?" he asked, during a council beneath the moon. "Our power could tame continents. The mortals of the outer world crawl in dust. Let them rise under our banner. The world should know the name of Atlantis." Atlas, with calm eyes, replied, "We were born to preserve, not to conquer. The sea does not rule the sky. The tide does not envy the mountain. Such is the balance our father decreed." But Guderus' words did not fade easily. Whispers spread among the younger princes that the gods favored them above men, that Poseidon's gift was proof of their divine right to rule. Temples once filled with hymns of gratitude now echoed with songs of power. The crystal heart pulsed faster, its rhythm uneasy, as if aware of the pride rising within those it sustained. Still, the world beyond Atlantis looked upon the island with wonder. Sailors who glimpsed its shores told tales of towers that touched clouds, of ships that glided without wind, of lights brighter than any flame. To them, Atlantis was paradise made real, the crown of creation. In the outer lands, where the younger princes reigned, cities of mirror and marble rose from the sea. Evaman built the library of the deep, where scrolls of knowledge glowed with living ink. Autochthon forged the Leviathan engines, colossal constructs that moved mountains and calmed storms. Maester created the harps of the wind, instruments that could summon rain or silence thunder. And through it all, Atlas watched, proud yet cautious, for he felt within the sea a subtle unrest, tremors like heartbeats deep below, as if the world itself was whispering of imbalance. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the sea, Atlas climbed the sacred mountain and stood before the crystal heart. The azure flame within it flickered like breath, and from its depths came a voice, soft, distant, sorrowful. "Son of the sea, beware the day when light forgets the ocean's depth. For from pride comes silence, and from silence the end of song." Atlas knelt. "Father, I will remember, but the tide of destiny does not obey memory." Years passed. The Atlanteans mastered the power of the crystal more deeply than even Poseidon intended. They discovered how to bend energy into form, creating living weapons, storm chariots, and floating citadels. Their armies could travel across the ocean faster than wind. Their blades gleamed with lightning itself. They no longer saw themselves as mortals blessed by gods, but as gods reborn. And yet, even in glory, there remained beauty. The festivals of the sea, filled the nights with music and color. Dancers moved like waves, their garments woven from light. Children played beside luminous fountains, unaware that the world they lived in was too perfect to last. One such night, as the city glittered beneath the moon, the earth trembled. Only for a breath, a faint shiver beneath the coral streets. The revelers laughed, dismissing it as the sea's sigh. But in the depths, the heart of the ocean glowed red for the first time. Cleto's prophecy echoed through the waters. Everything born of love will be tested by loss. Atlas stood upon his balcony, looking toward the horizon. The stars seemed to flicker, dimmed by a presence he could not name. Somewhere far below, beneath marble and coral, a storm was awakening, silent, patient, inevitable. And though the people sang and the seas were calm, a single drop of water fell from the temple's ceiling onto the marble floor, dark, heavy, shaped like a tear. It was the ocean's warning. The golden age had begun to fade. Chapter 3. The whisper beneath the waves. The sea was calm to calm. In the silence that followed the revels of the golden age, Atlantis held its breath. The tides no longer sang with the same rhythm, and beneath the glimmering surface, shadows moved with restless purpose. Atlas, the wise king, could feel it. Each night, he stood before the balcony of his palace, watching the horizon. The moonlight shimmered upon the sea, painting silver trails across waters that once spoke to him. But now, there was no reply. The ocean, his father's realm, had grown distant, listening to whispers that did not belong to gods. He summoned the Council of the 12, his brothers and their high priests. When they gathered beneath the dome of crystal, their reflections danced across the polished walls like fractured light. The sea grows silent, Atlas said. Its voice is fading, as though something deep below seeks to drown it. Have any of you felt the change? Gadaris, his younger brother, smirked. You speak like an old man, Atlas. The sea is silent because it obeys us now. We have mastered its current, bent its energy to our command. Perhaps it is not the sea that grows quiet, but you who have grown afraid of your own power. A murmur of uneasy laughter rippled through the hall. Atlas looked to the others, to Mester Anicius, Evamen, each now cloaked in the pride of their creations. Machines pulsed with living light in their cities. Armies moved without horses. Temples gleamed like miniature suns. The more they mastered the crystal's secrets, the more they forgot its warnings. The ocean does not serve, Atlas replied softly. It endures, and it remembers. The words fell like stones into still water, leaving ripples of silence behind them. Outside, thunder rolled though no storm darkened the sky. Days turned to months. Strange phenomena spread across the empire. In the western province, fishermen vanished, their boats found adrift, nets torn by unseen claws. In the southern coral fields, the Leviathan engines, once symbols of Atlantean genius, began to malfunction. Their golden bodies trembled, emitting low, mournful sounds, as if haunted by voices within. Priests in the temple of Poseidon reported visions, waves made of shadow, eyes like suns opening beneath the abyss, and a woman of water whose tears turned the sea red. Yet the council dismissed them. Superstition, said Gadaris. The priests grow old and fearful. Dreams, said Maester, born from exhaustion. But Atlas could not rest. He descended alone into the chamber of the crystal heart, where the sacred flame of Poseidon pulsed deep below the capital. Once it glowed azure, pure and constant. Now veins of crimson ran through it like blood beneath the skin of light. As Atlas approached, the chamber trembled. His reflection shimmered upon the crystal's surface, but behind it, another shape appeared. A silhouette, vast, feminine, sorrowful, formed within the heart. "Cleto," he whispered. The voice that answered was soft as the tide, yet filled the chamber with an ancient sorrow. "My son, the sea remembers love, but it also remembers betrayal. The balance has shifted. You have drawn upon the ocean's breath without gratitude, taken without giving. The deep begins to awaken. Tell me how to stop it," Atlas begged. "I will restore the balance." But the voice faded, leaving only the faint echo of a name, Gaia. Then the sea roared through the chamber, extinguishing the crystal's calm glow for a heartbeat. When Atlas returned above, he found his city burning with pride. Gadaris had declared a new festival, the triumph of man over the sea. Processions filled the streets. Statues of Poseidon were draped not in offerings but in chains of gold, symbolizing humanity's dominion over the gods. In the great plaza, a machine unlike any other was unveiled, the Trident of Dominion, an enormous energy weapon forged from fragments of the crystal heart itself. It pulsed with stormlight, drawing power from the very ocean it sought to command. Crowds cheered, priests wept in silence, and Atlas, unseen among them, felt his heart break. "They do not hear the sea anymore," he murmured. "They hear only themselves." That night, as lightning danced across the horizon, Atlas climbed to the highest tower of his palace. The sky was black, not with storm, but with silence. He closed his eyes and called upon his father, Poseidon. "Lord of the deep, hear your son. Atlantis stands on the edge of pride. Show me how to save them." For a long moment, nothing answered. Then, a distant thunder rumbled from the abyss, and in it came a whisper: "To save Atlantis, you must remember what they have forgotten, humility before creation." The words struck like a blade of truth, and with them came a vision: the sea swallowing the city, the crystal shattering, the stars dimming above. Atlas fell to his knees. "Then I must become their warning," he said. But below, unseen, in the deepest rifts of the ocean, something ancient stirred. A presence older than Poseidon, older than gods, something born when the world was still unshaped. It had slept through ages, sealed beneath chains of coral and divine light. Now, the energy of the trident had reached it, and the chains began to crack. The priests who dreamt that night awoke screaming of a heart that beat beneath the abyss, of eyes opening in the dark. The whisper beneath the waves had become a voice, and soon the voice would become a storm. Chapter 4: The Awakening of the Deep. The night the sea screamed, even the stars shuddered. It began as a tremor, soft, rhythmic, almost like breathing. The Atlanteans thought it was the pulse of their trident engine, still newly awakened, its energy flowing through the veins of the city. But beneath the coral foundations, the abyss stirred. The tremor deepened, and the song that once lulled the empire to sleep turned into a low, resonant moan, ancient as creation itself. Fishermen in the outer rings saw the ocean rise without wind. Waves bent in spirals, circling invisible centers, and the moon's reflection twisted upon the water as though swallowed by unseen hands. At dawn, the first omen appeared. Whales and sea serpents, the sacred beasts of Poseidon, fled toward the surface, their cries echoing through the air. Some hurled themselves upon the shores of Atlantis, their bodies trembling with terror. Their eyes, vast and sorrowful, glowed with the same crimson veins that ran through the crystal heart. Priests gathered in panic, before the temple of the deep flame. The oldest among them, Thoros the Keeper, fell to his knees and spoke in a trembling voice. It wakes, that which even the gods could not drown. The one beneath the deep returns. But the council laughed. Old men's tales, said Gideris. If something stirs below, it stirs because we command it. So he ordered a demonstration, a surge of the trident's power, directed into the sea to remind the abyss who rules it. Atlas stood apart, silent. He could feel the wrongness like a pulse behind his eyes. The ocean had stopped breathing. The air tasted of iron and rain, though no cloud graced the heavens. When the trident roared, the earth answered. The sea split open. For a single heartbeat, all was still. Then a roar tore through creation. Columns of water rose like towers, crashing against the city's outer walls. Lightning, summoned from nowhere, struck the towers of the east, and beneath the waves, eyes opened. They were not human, nor divine, but primal, vast orbs of molten gold and stormlight. From the trench beneath the capital came a sound like a heartbeat magnified by eternity. The deep that had slept since the forging of the world now remembered itself. In the chaos, the trident shuddered. Cracks of crimson fire spread across its body, and the energy it drew from the ocean became wild, unstable. Engineers screamed as lightning burst from its veins. The sky darkened, the sea frothed white, and the earth beneath Atlantis shook. Atlas, standing upon the balcony of the upper citadel, felt the vibration climb up through the marble and into his chest. "It is not the sea," he whispered. "It is something beneath it." Then he heard it, the voice. It spoke not in words, but in memory. 1,000 drowned voices overlapping, forming a single terrible consciousness. Children of the tide, you built your empire upon my silence. You fed upon my slumber. Now your engines have sung me awake. Atlas fell to his knees, clutching his temples. Visions flooded his mind, the forming of the world, when gods wrestled the chaos of the deep. The day Poseidon chained an ancient thing beneath the newborn ocean. A being without form, born from the void before light. It had no name. 4 names give limits, but the ancients had called it Thalcora, the dreaming depth. It had slept for eons beneath the heart of the world, feeding on the warmth of the planet's core. The Atlantean crystals, born of Poseidon's chains, were the remnants of that prison, and now the trident had shattered them. You tore the sun from the sea, the voice whispered. Now you will see what lies in darkness. The water beneath the capital began to churn, glowing with bioluminescent storms. Shapes moved within, colossal, undefined, writhing like countenance awakening. Atlas rose, staggering, his vision filled with ruin. "Father," he called, "Poseidon, the deep rises against your children." But no answer came, only the thunder of waves. Far across the empire, cities built upon floating rings began to sink. The smaller islands cracked, swallowed by whirlpools of black water. Temples collapsed, their crystal spires glowing dimly as they sank into the depths. Still, Gideris and his faction refused to yield. "Harness it," he shouted to his engineers. "If this thing feeds upon power, we will bind it with greater force." They unleashed the trident again. Bolts of blue-white energy tore across the sky, striking the ocean's surface. The light reached the abyss, and for a brief moment, silence returned. But then the sea laughed. It was not a sound meant for mortal ears. It vibrated through bone and air, through the marble of the city, through the blood of every creature. Men dropped their tools, screaming as visions of endless water flooded their minds. And from the heart of the ocean rose a column of black mist, spiraling like a serpent made of storms. Within it pulsed the faint outline of something immense, chained and unchained in the same breath. The people of Atlantis fell to their knees. Atlas alone stood unmoving, his cloak torn by the wind. His voice rose, quiet but steady. "You will not have them." He held aloft the Atlantean seal, a relic of Poseidon's covenant, a shard of divine coral that glowed with pure blue light. He drove it into the marble floor, and a shock wave rippled outward. The sea recoiled for a moment, its laughter turning to a hiss. "You are your father's son," the voice murmured. "But even gods cannot chain me forever." The mist withdrew, not in defeat, but in promise. The storm passed. The skies cleared. The trident fell silent, its energy spent, but the damage was done. The abyss was awake. When dawn came, the ocean was still again, too still, too bright. The people rejoiced, thinking the danger gone. But Atlas knew. He felt it in the water's pulse, in the faint echo beneath every wave. The deep had tasted freedom, and it was waiting. He turned to the horizon and whispered, "The fall of Atlantis will not come in fire. It will come in silence." Beneath his feet, unseen, Thalcora stirred once more, and the sea, patient and eternal, began its slow revenge. Chapter 5. The Fall of the Trident. The city of Atlantis glittered once more, but beneath its light, fear grew like wrought in marble. After the storm subsided, the Atlanteans rebuilt their temples, polished their crystal towers, and pretended the ocean's silence meant peace. The trident, though cracked and dimmed, still stood upon the Plaza of Triumph, a monument to mankind's dominion. Yet to Atlas, it looked less like a symbol of glory and more like a wound in the heart of the world. The priests whispered that the sea had withdrawn its blessing. The tides came slower. Fish fled the waters. The glow of the crystal heart flickered as though gasping for breath. And still, the council refused to listen. "The trident is our crown," said Gadiras. "It is proof that Atlantis has surpassed the gods themselves. We will repair it, refine it, and when it shines again, the sea will bow to us once more." Atlas said nothing. He had long stopped arguing with his brother, for in Gadaras he saw the reflection of all mankind's hunger, the need not just to live, but to rule. And so, as the artisans worked to reforge the trident, they dug deeper into the sea's veins, drawing energy from the volcanic rifts that held the ocean's bones. Each surge of power shook the seabed. Each pulse fed the thing that slumbered below. They called it progress. The sea called it provocation. In the western citadel, a new experiment began. The engineers sought to merge the shattered fragments of the trident with the core itself, to channel all divine energy through a single conduit. "It will be perfection reborn," they said, "a god of our own making." Atlas watched in silence as they performed their rituals of light. Machines hummed, crystals glowed, energy spiraled upward like captured lightning. For a moment, it seemed to work. The trident blazed with renewed brilliance, casting golden light across the city. Then the sound changed. The hum became a scream. The energy twisted inward, folding upon itself. The sky darkened as clouds gathered in spirals above the city, drawn by the magnetic pull of the weapon's awakening. Wind tore through the streets, flinging banners from towers. The sea itself began to climb the outer walls. "Shut it down," cried the artisans. "We can't," shouted another. "The core is feeding itself." Atlas felt the same presence as before, that vast, ancient awareness rising from below. He could almost hear its laughter echoing through the waves. "Children of the sunless depths," it murmured, "you break the chains willingly." The trident erupted. A column of blinding light speared the heavens. The sky cracked, thunder rolling like drums of war. From the ocean floor, magma rose, glowing red through the water. The lower rings of the city began to tremble, stone melting, metal warping. The crystal heart screamed, not with sound, but with a frequency that tore through the soul. Its once blue light turned a furious crimson. The priests fell to their knees, clutching their chests as the energy of the core surged beyond control. And in that moment, the sea answered. A tidal wave unlike any seen before rose on the horizon, a wall of water miles high, its crest crowned with lightning. Within its depths shimmered shapes, colossal, luminous, ancient. The gods of the deep had awoken. Atlas rushed to the citadel tower. The city below him glowed like a dying star. "Gudaris," he shouted across the storm. "Stop this madness. The sea is rising." But his brother stood upon the plaza of triumph, arms raised to the sky. His voice carried through the wind, defiant and trembling. "Let it rise. Let the gods come. I will meet them as equals." The trident, now fused with his machine, pulsed behind him, alive, monstrous, divine. Bolts of light lanced across the heavens, striking the ocean again and again, boiling the waves. Atlas ran toward him, pushing through wind and rain, his heart pounding with despair. "You'll destroy us all." "No," Gudaris screamed back. "I will save us. This is the dawn of a new age, not of gods, but of men." He grasped the trident's handle. The energy surged through him, blinding and terrible. For one brief instant, Gudaris stood like a titan, his body alight with golden fire. Then the power consumed him. The explosion split the sea. A ring of pure energy expanded outward, vaporizing everything it touched. Palaces shattered, bridges melted. The outer rings of Atlantis sank beneath boiling waves. The people screamed as the tide swallowed their homes. Atlas, thrown to the ground, could only watch as his brother vanished within the storm of light. When the glow faded, the trident lay broken, its shaft cracked, its energy spilling like blood into the water. The silence that followed was worse than the roar. For 3 days, Atlantis burned beneath the sea. Lightning carved new scars upon its walls. The air was filled with salt and grief. When the storm finally died, half the empire was gone. The lower rings swallowed, the people scattered or dead. Atlas walked among the ruins, his heart heavy with guilt. The ocean, once a friend, now felt cold and alien. The whispers beneath it had grown louder. He could hear them even in sleep, voices of the drowned, chanting his brother's name. He stood before the remnants of the trident, now little more than twisted gold. "You sought to make man a god," he said softly, "and in doing so, you turned him into his own destruction." He lifted a shard of the broken weapon, holding it to the light. Within its reflection, he saw a vision, the sea covering all, the towers falling, the light fading. "The fall has begun," whispered the wind. And in the depths of the ocean, Thalcora stirred again, its laughter rolling through the dark like thunder. The council disbanded, the faith fractured. Some sought to flee Atlantis. Others swore vengeance against the gods. Atlas alone, prepared for what he knew must come next, the reckoning of the sea itself. He climbed once more to the temple and knelt before the statue of Poseidon, cracked and eroded by the storm. "Father," he said, voice trembling. I could not stop them. If there is any mercy left, show me how to save what remains. But the sea only murmured, and in its whisper he heard a single word, a prophecy, soft as sorrow. Beneath the waves, all things returned. Atlas lowered his head. The gods had turned their faces away, and Atlantis, the empire of perfection, now walked the path of ruin. Chapter the 6th, The Fractured Empire. The sea was quiet now, too quiet. Where once Atlantis had pulsed with life, only silence remained. The waves rolled gently above the ruins, masking the death that lingered beneath. Towers that once reached toward the heavens now lay bent and broken, swallowed by the deep. The crystal heart's glow had faded to a dull ember, flickering weakly beneath layers of debris and coral dust. And in the silence, the empire began to fracture. At first, the survivors clung together, priests, soldiers, scholars, and refugees gathering among the upper rings that still stood above the abyss. They lit torches against the cold and prayed for the sea's mercy, but the sea gave them nothing. Then came the hunger. The energy conduits were severed, the food stores drowned. Machines that once provided warmth and light now lay silent. Without guidance, fear turned to anger. The gods have forsaken us, cried one faction. No, said another. It was Atlas who brought their wrath. Whispers turned to accusations. Accusations turned to blood. Atlas, still mourning his brother, walked among the ruins like a shadow. He saw the faces of his people, pale, hollow, desperate. He heard their words, once proud, now trembling with madness. They no longer called themselves Atlanteans. Some spoke of forming a new dawn, a city reborn from the ashes of the old, free from divine rule. Others swore allegiance to the sea priests, who claimed the disaster was punishment, and that repentance alone could restore favor. But the third faction, the Iron Sons, were worse. They worshipped not the gods, but the memory of Gaderis. They called him the Ascended, the man who dared to challenge the divine. They began crafting idols in his image, forging weapons from the ruins of the trident. In their eyes, Gaderis had not failed. He had transcended. Atlas stood upon the citadel balcony one dusk, looking out at the fractured city. Fires burned in the distance. Civil war had already begun. He turned to his advisor, Lysandra, one of the few who still remained loyal. Her once golden armor was tarnished, her eyes weary but sharp. They tear each other apart, she said bitterly. Soon there will be nothing left to save. They've lost faith, Atlas replied, not just in the gods, but in themselves. Then what remains to believe in? Hope, he whispered. Even if it's all we have left. But hope was fading fast. The Iron Sons launched their assault on the temple district, slaughtering priests and taking control of the last power chambers. Their leader, Commander Raycon, a man twisted by grief and glory, declared himself High Regent of the new Atlantis. He stood upon the ruins of the Temple of Poseidon, the broken trident shard embedded in his gauntlet like a claw. The gods have abandoned us, he roared before the gathered masses. But Gaderis showed us the truth. Power is not given, it is taken. His followers screamed his name, and in that moment, Atlas knew the war had begun. For months, Atlantis drowned in its own rage. Cities within the domes sealed themselves off, declaring independence. The seas between them turned red with battle. Ancient machines, half alive, half broken, were reactivated and turned into weapons. Atlas led the defenders of the old faith, the guardians of the depths, to protect what remained of the sacred relics. They fought not for dominion, but for memory, to preserve the essence of what Atlantis once was. Yet every victory came with sorrow. Every street reclaimed was paved with corpses. The once beautiful city of light had become a graveyard of ambition. One night, beneath a storm that shook even the ocean floor, Riken and Atlas met upon the ruins of the Plaza of Triumph, the very place where Gadaris had perished. Lightning illuminated their faces. One burned with fury, the other carved with grief. "You cling to ghosts, Atlas," Raycon snarled, raising his blade. "The age of gods is over. Atlantis must evolve or die." "And what will rise from the ashes?" Atlas replied. "A kingdom of machines and madness, a kingdom of men, free of the chains of divine tyranny. You would trade wisdom for pride, as my brother did." They clashed, steel against steel, faith against fury. The storm raged around them, waves crashing upon shattered spires. Sparks flew as their weapons met, illuminating their faces like two fallen stars locked in endless struggle. Finally, Raycon drove the trident shard deep into Atlas's armor. The energy flared, searing his flesh. Atlas fell to one knee, yet his eyes burned with something unyielding. "You cannot kill what you've already lost," he whispered. With a final surge, Atlas shattered Raycon's gauntlet, the shard exploding in a burst of white light. The blast threw them both apart. When the smoke cleared, Raycon was gone, swallowed by the sea. The battle ended, but the cost was beyond measure. The remaining factions, leaderless and broken, drifted apart. The once great domes of Atlantis cracked, flooding with seawater. Atlas, wounded and weary, returned to the upper citadel, now half submerged beneath rising tides. Lysandra found him there, staring into the abyss. "It's over," she said softly. "No," he replied. "It's only beginning. The sea will take everything, even memory. Then let it take me too." He looked toward the horizon, where faint lights shimmered beneath the waves, the remnants of the crystal heart still pulsing weakly like a dying heartbeat. "As long as it still shines," Atlas murmured, "Atlantis is not yet dead." Lysandra touched his arm. "What will you do?" "I will go to the depths," he said, "to the place where the trident was born, and where the gods still sleep." The sea whispered in answer, soft, mournful, inevitable. Above the ruins, thunder rolled. Below them, the abyss waited. And as Atlas descended once more into the dark, he carried not a weapon, but a vow to either restore Atlantis or perish with it. Chapter 7. Descent into the abyss. The sea had grown darker than ever before. Where light once danced across coral spires and crystal domes, now only shadow reigned. The deep groaned like a living beast, a sound of ancient pain that seemed to echo from the bones of the world itself. Atlas stood upon the edge of the last trench, the abyss of Kyloth. Before him, the sea floor split into a wound that seemed endless, swallowing even the faint glow of the crystal heart above. He wore no crown, no armor of kings, only the remnants of his father's cloak, and a single blade forged from the shards of the trident. Its light pulsed faintly, guiding him like a dying star. Lysandra watched from behind, her voice trembling. "Beyond this point, no one returns. That is why I must go," Atlas replied. "The gods took everything from us. Perhaps in their depths, they will give us an answer." She reached for him, but he stepped into the darkness. The abyss swallowed him whole. As he descended, the waters grew colder, heavier, pressing against his body like the weight of forgotten sins. Around him drifted the ruins of what had once been statues of titans, shattered columns, relics half buried in the sand. Whispers floated in the current voices of those long dead. Some pleaded, some cursed, all remembered. Atlas, you could not save them. You defied the gods and broke the sea. Your brother waits below. He clenched his jaw, pushing onward. The light of his blade flickered as he moved deeper until even sound began to vanish. Only the beat of his heart remained, slow, steady, defiant. Then the seafloor opened. A vast cavern lay before him, an underworld of impossible beauty and terror. Pillars of obsidian stretched into the gloom, glowing faintly with veins of crimson. In the center rose a colossal structure, a temple carved from black coral, shaped like a spiral descending into infinity. The Temple of Thalkura, the dwelling of the first god of the deep. Atlas approached, his blade shimmering faintly. Symbols carved into the coral walls pulsed to life as he passed ancient glyphs of power, telling the story of a war before time. They showed a god chained beneath the waves. Thalkura, the abyssal lord, once worshipped as the bringer of life, later cast down as the devourer of worlds. It was said he forged the trident himself to command the seas. But when he turned it against the heavens, his own kin sealed him in the blackest trench. And now the seal was weakening. Atlas reached the temple doors. They opened with a sound like the sea itself, exhaling. Inside, the air shimmered heavy with ancient power. At the center of the hall floated a sphere of dark light, pulsing, alive, wrapped in chains of silver and salt. The heart of the abyss. Atlas felt its pull immediately. The voice that came from within was not spoken. It was felt, like a tide rising in his soul. So, the child of Atlantis comes at last. Thalkura Atlas whispered. They told you I was a monster. You are a monster. You drowned the world. No, I merely revealed what it truly was. I offered them strength. They chose fear. The voice rippled through his mind like thunder. And now you seek power, as your brother once did. No, I seek redemption. Redemption is only a form of hunger. Atlas stepped closer. The light of his blade clashed with the shadow of the heart. If you forged the trident, then you can restore it. Why would I? Because without it, the sea dies, and so do you. The abyss shuddered. For a moment, Atlas thought he had won, until laughter filled the temple, ancient and terrible. The sea will not die, mortal. It will be reborn, and you will help me. From the darkness, shapes began to move. Figures, twisted remnants of Atlantean warriors. Their bodies fused with coral and steel. Their eyes glowed with abyssal fire. The Abyssal Legion. Atlas raised his blade. The first creature lunged. He sliced through it, the sea igniting with blue flame. More followed, dozens, then hundreds, clawing, screaming, relentless. He fought like a storm, his strikes echoing through the water like lightning. For every foe he felled, two more rose. Their blood turned the sea black. You cannot fight the abyss, Thalkura's voice thundered. You are the abyss. A tendril of shadow wrapped around Atlas's arm, tearing away his blade. The darkness surged, coiling around him, crushing, consuming. He screamed, his vision fading. Then, through the pain, he heard another voice, faint, distant, yet unmistakable. Brother Gadiris. The shadow faltered. Atlas opened his eyes and saw him, or rather, what remained of him, a spirit, half light, half void, bound to the heart itself. You shouldn't be here, Atlas whispered. Neither should you, Gadaris replied. But it's not too late. You tried to destroy everything. No, I tried to set us free. The gods caged us in their perfection, but I failed. Atlas reached out, then help me end this. Gadarus's eyes glowed softly. You cannot destroy Thalcora, but you can bind him. Use the shard. Seal him again. Atlas looked down. The broken shard of the trident still glowed faintly at his side. He grasped it, feeling its pulse sync with his own heartbeat. The voice of Thalcora roared, "Foolish mortal. You think you can chain eternity?" "No," Atlas said, his voice steady, "but I can remind it what it fears." He plunged the shard into the heart. A shockwave tore through the temple. Light and darkness exploded outward, colliding in a blinding storm. Chains of energy reformed, wrapping around the heart as Thalcora screamed, a sound that shook the ocean floor. The legion dissolved, the darkness receded, and when it was over, Atlas collapsed upon the temple steps, breathing raggedly. The heart was still silent once more. Gadarus's spirit stood before him, fading. "You've done what I could not. Atlantis still has a chance. Goodbye, brother." "No, Atlas, not goodbye. Just until the tide returns." He vanished into the light. Atlas rose slowly. The abyss was calm again. The sea, for the first time in centuries, was quiet, not dead, but resting. He turned and began his ascent, carrying the shard and the memory of all that was lost. Above him, faint sunlight pierced the depths, and the voice of the ocean whispered gently, "Rise, last son of Atlantis. The world awaits your return." Chapter 8. The Return of the Tide. The sea was still when Atlas rose from the abyss, a silence so vast that even the currents dared not move. Around him, the darkness thinned into a dim sapphire glow. The ruins of Atlantis stretched below like a ghostly memory, towers broken in half, statues lying on their sides, and the once glorious palace of Poseidon, now nothing but scattered stone and coral. He drifted upward slowly, carrying in his hand the shard of the trident, still glowing faintly from the seal he had reforged. The light was pale now, the color of morning dawn, yet it pulsed like a living thing, in rhythm with his heart. Above, the sun broke through the surface for the first time in many years. Its rays reached him like the touch of a forgotten god. He closed his eyes and whispered, "The abyss sleeps once more." But as he neared the surface, he felt it, a stirring, subtle but immense, the heartbeat of the ocean itself. The sea was waking, not as it once was, but as something new. He emerged amid the shattered rings of the old capital. The waves glittered with strange light. The water shimmered like molten glass. The last surviving Atlanteans had gathered there, their faces hollow with despair. Yet when they saw him rise from the sea, they fell to their knees in awe. "Atlas, our king," whispered Lysandra, tears blending with the salt spray. "No," he said softly, "I am only its servant now." Behind him, the ocean began to shift. From the deep trenches came a low hum, the song of the crystal heart, echoing faintly once more. Its tone was no longer sorrowful, but resolute, like a promise reborn. The Atlanteans looked around in fear as the waves began to churn. The sea was moving with purpose, spiraling around the ruins. Water rose into the air like living glass, sculpting new forms, restoring shattered walls. The ocean itself was rebuilding what time had stolen. Lysandra stepped forward, awe in her eyes. "It listens to you." "No," Atlas said, his gaze distant. "It listens to itself. I merely reminded it of its voice." For 3 days and nights, the tide did not rest. The ruins of Atlantis began to rise, not of marble and coral as before, but of liquid crystal, fluid yet eternal. Towers grew like frozen waves, bridges formed from silver light. The people watched as their world returned, reshaped by the will of the sea. But Atlas felt the cost. Every surge of power, every echo of creation, drained him. The shard burned in his palm, its glow sinking into his flesh. He could feel the ocean's will merging with his own, no longer separate but one. He stood upon the central platform, once the throne of his father, and looked upon the new city. It was beautiful and terrible. The ocean had rebuilt, not a kingdom of men, but a monument of memory, a city that would never again be fully mortal. "Lysandra," he said quietly, "if this is to stand, it must no longer belong to us." "What do you mean?" "Atlantis fell because it believed itself divine. We cannot repeat that sin. The sea gives us this second life, not to rule, but to remember." Her eyes widened as realization dawned. "You mean to leave it behind?" "Not leave," Atlas murmured, "but become it." That night, as the stars shimmered over calm waters, Atlas gathered the last of the Atlantean survivors. The new crystal heart floated above the central altar, glowing with serene light. The people waited in silence. "You once asked the sea for power," Atlas said, his voice echoing through the waves. "But power without purpose is ruin. The gods we defied were never our enemies. It was our pride that drowned us." He lifted the shard of the trident high above his head. Its light flared, merging with the glow of the heart. The two pulsed together, their energies resonating. The ocean trembled. "From this day," Atlas declared, "Atlantis shall no longer seek to rule the sea. It shall be the sea." He drove the shard into the altar. The world erupted in light. The sea rose into the sky, spiraling upward in vast rings of radiance. Every drop of water carried the song of Atlantis, the song that had once foretold its doom, now reborn as its salvation. The people cried out, not in fear but in reverence, as the light enveloped them. One by one, they dissolved into the water, their forms scattering into luminous streams that merged with the sea. Lysandra reached for Atlas as her body began to fade. "Will we live?" she whispered. "Always," he replied. "In every wave, in every whisper of the tide, Atlantis will live." She smiled through her tears. "Then the world will never forget us." "No," Atlas said softly, "but it will never truly know us either." And with that, the last king of Atlantis stepped forward into the light. When the light faded, there was no city, no ruins, no bodies, no sound, only the calm, infinite sea. But beneath its surface, the ocean glowed faintly with veins of silver and blue, pulsing in rhythm with a heartbeat. The world above would remember the flood as myth, a story told by sailors and dreamers. They would say that Atlantis vanished because of divine wrath, but the truth was quieter and far greater. For in the depths where light never dies, Atlantis still breathes. Its people became the soul of the ocean, its king, the guardian of its silence. And sometimes, when the tide turns and the moon hangs low, one might hear his voice carried by the waves. We are not lost. We have merely become the sea. Chapter 9. The Awakening of the Surface. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell, like waves breaking against the same indifferent shore. The sea, eternal and patient, kept its silence, but within its depths, a quiet pulse endured. It was the rhythm of a sleeping world, a remnant of the kingdom that had once defied gods and time alike. The age of myth gave way to the age of men. Ships conquered horizons, compasses replaced constellations, and the stars were no longer read as omens, but as maps. Yet even as science sought to name every current and measure every depth, there remained places the sea refused to yield, the silent zones where machines failed and light dissolved. Sailors still whispered the old name, Atlantis, a word forbidden by scholars, mocked by kings, but sung by the ocean in dreams. It began again on a night of storms. A research vessel drifted off the Azorian Trench, its lights flickering against a wall of thunderclouds. Among its crew was Dr. Elias Corrin, a man who had spent his life chasing the myth of the lost empire. He had read every forbidden tablet, followed every shifting current, and listened to every whisper of the deep. The world called him a fool, but that night the sea called him chosen. As lightning split the sky, his instruments began to hum an impossible frequency, older than language. The readings were unstable, oscillating between sound and silence. It's not interference, Elias muttered, eyes wide. It's a signal. The storm intensified. Waves crashed over the deck as if the sea itself were trying to claim the ship. And then, amid the chaos, a sound pierced the noise, a melody, faint, mournful, but deliberate. It was the song beneath the waves, the same melody sung in the last days of Atlantis. Elias plunged a hydrophone into the water. The machine shook violently, emitting bursts of glowing light across its display. Lines of energy spiraled across the map, geometric patterns of impossible symmetry, forming concentric rings. Concentric, like the descriptions from Plato, he whispered. Atlantis. The signal pulsed again, stronger. A voice, faint, distant, wove through the static. It was not human. It was not divine. It was the ocean speaking in its own tongue. The tide returns. The crew screamed as the sea erupted in light. Columns of water rose like pillars of glass, surrounding the ship. The waves shaped symbols, glyphs of ancient Atlantean language, glowing beneath the surface. The melody deepened, harmonizing with the thunder. Then, silence. When the light faded, the ocean was calm once more. The instruments were dead. The storm had vanished. Only one thing remained, a shard of crystal resting on the deck, smooth, pulsating faintly with blue light. Elias reached out to touch it, and the world changed. He saw visions not with his eyes, but with his soul. Cities of coral and light, towers reaching through water and sky, faces radiant with wisdom and sorrow. And at the center, a man standing before the sea, his voice echoing through eternity. We are not lost. We have merely become the sea. Elias fell to his knees, weeping. You were real. The crystal pulsed again, embedding itself into his palm. For a moment, he felt his heart synchronize with something vast, ancient, and alive. He heard the ocean's thoughts, its memory, its endless yearning. You have found us, the voice whispered. Now awaken the world. Days later, when the ship returned to port, Elias was the only survivor. His crew had vanished without a trace. The authorities dismissed his report as madness, the ravings of a man broken by the sea. But he knew the truth. He began to see patterns everywhere, in the tides, the clouds, even the sound of the wind. The world itself was remembering. Rivers began to shift course subtly. Underwater tremors pulsed across the globe, forming perfect rings. In the Pacific, lights were seen deep beneath the trenches, moving, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The tide of memory had begun. Governments panicked. Satellites recorded anomalies that defied physics. vast structures rising from beneath the sea, only to vanish within hours. Energy signatures, resembling no known element, flickered across the ocean floor. And then came the dreams. All across the world, people began dreaming of water. They saw a city beneath the waves, a king of light and shadow, and a voice calling their names. Some awoke in tears, others awoke speaking an unknown tongue. The myth had become contagion. Elias gathered those who shared the visions, scientists, poets, sailors, mystics. Together they formed the Order of the Deep Flame, a group dedicated to deciphering the message of the sea. They believed the ocean was alive, not metaphorically, but truly conscious, and that humanity was being summoned, not punished. Atlantis did not fall, Elias told them. It changed, and now it wants us to remember what we were before pride drowned us. In the years that followed, their work was ridiculed, suppressed, erased, but they continued in secret. They built deep-sea observatories, designed not to extract or conquer, but to listen. And one night, deep beneath the Atlantic, they heard it again, the melody. Only this time, it was no longer sorrowful. It was a call. The sea began to glow. From the Mariana Trench to the Arctic Circle, veins of blue light pulsed through the water, like a living network awakening. Whales sang in harmony, schools of fish swam in perfect spirals, and the magnetic field of the earth began to pulse with a new rhythm. Elias stood on the shore, feeling the tide lap at his feet. He could feel it inside him, the same pulse that once guided the kings of Atlantis. The shard in his palm shimmered, and in its glow he saw a reflection, not of himself, but of a vast oceanic consciousness staring back. "Atlas," he whispered. "The tide returns," came the answer. Lightning arced across the horizon as the waves began to rise, not in destruction, but in awakening. The sea was remembering, and soon the world above would too. Chapter X. The Return of the King. The sea had begun to breathe again. Across the world, from the icy poles to the burning equator, the waters shimmered with veins of living light. Oceans glowed in the night, like galaxies turned inside out. The world stood in awe. Some called it divine, others called it disaster. But beneath it all, something ancient was stirring. Deep within the heart trench, at the place where light had never reached since the dawn of time, a monument pulsed, half temple, half living creature. It was the last sanctuary of Atlantis. Within it, sealed in crystal and coral, lay the body of Atlas, king of the lost empire, guardian of the deep flame. For 10,000 years he had slept. Now he dreamed again. In his dream, the sea was not water, but memory. He saw the fall, the towers collapsing under divine fire, the screams of his people, the last song of the priestesses as they turned into light. He saw himself standing before the storm, raising his arms to the heavens and whispering a vow. "If the gods will not spare my people, then let the sea take us, but let our spirit live until the world remembers." And then came silence. But now, through that silence, he heard a voice, a human voice. "Atlas, can you hear me?" It was faint, trembling, the voice of a mortal, reaching through technology and faith alike. Elias Corin, the mortal who had found the shard. In the depths, the crystal in Elias's hand pulsed violently. The resonance spread through his veins, burning like liquid light. His eyes turned silver blue, reflecting the very ocean itself. Around him, waves began to move against gravity, forming a vortex of perfect symmetry. The scientists screamed, the equipment shattered, and the ocean floor cracked open like an awakening heart. Then, silence, and from the darkness rose a figure. He was neither alive nor dead, neither god nor ghost. His skin shimmered like obsidian and light. His hair flowed like strands of water. His eyes, two suns, drowned in eternity. Atlas had returned. The sea bowed around him. The pressure of the deep bent iron and stone alike. But he stood unmoved, holding in his gaze the weight of 1,000 ages. So, this is the surface world, he murmured, his voice carrying across the currents like thunder softened by sorrow. The age of men. Above the ocean, storms erupted without warning. Satellites failed. Whales breached in unison. Across the globe, people fell to their knees, hearing a whisper in their dreams, a name they could not pronounce but somehow remembered. Atlas. In the Atlantic Observatory, Elias awoke from his trance. His hand glowed, the crystal fused with his blood, and in the reflection of the ocean, he saw the king's face. "You're real," Elias gasped. "I found you." "No," Atlas replied from within the waves, his voice echoing in every drop of water. "You remembered me." The world found itself. As Atlas rose toward the surface, his memories reassembled like broken stars. The fall of the Titans, the covenant of Poseidon, the promise of the deep flame, it all returned. He had defied death, not through immortality, but through remembrance. His body was the ocean, his heart the tide. When he broke through the surface, the night sky split open. A column of light shot into the heavens, piercing the clouds. The waters circled around him like a living halo, and the air trembled with his first breath. The world's instruments recorded the phenomenon as an unclassified atmospheric anomaly. But for those who saw it, sailors, pilots, prophets, they knew what it was, the return of a god. Atlas walked upon the waves. Each step left ripples of light that spread for miles. The wind carried his voice, and every creature of the sea listened. The dolphins circled him like guardians. The leviathans of the deep bowed their heads, and the coral forests rose to bloom once more. Atlantis was not destroyed, he said softly, his words echoing across the world. It was reborn. You have called me back. Now the tide shall rise for all. Elias appeared before him, standing on a floating platform amidst the storm. The two faced each other, one mortal, one myth. "Why now?" Elias asked. "Why return after all these ages?" Atlas's gaze was both kind and eternal. "Because your world has begun to repeat our sins. You divide the sea, command the wind, claim dominion over flame. We once did the same, and drowned beneath the weight of our own brilliance. So you came to warn us?" Elias asked. "No," said Atlas, eyes glowing like storms. "I came to guide you." The next moment, the sea responded. From every trench and abyss, light began to rise. Towers of crystalline structures rebuilding themselves from the ocean floor. The outlines of Atlantis emerged beneath the waves, visible even from orbit. The city of memory had begun to return. Atlas turned to Elias and raised his hand. The crystal shard in Elias's palm shattered into light, fusing into his body completely. "You carry our spark now," Atlas said. "You are the bridge between surface and sea." "What do you want me to do?" Elias asked. "Listen," the king whispered, "and remember." In that instant, the two minds merged, ancient and modern, divine and human. Through Elias, Atlas saw the wars, the machines, the silent cries of a planet devoured by its own hunger. Through Atlas, Elias saw the harmony that once was the unity of mind and nature, the song of creation that humanity had forgotten. "We can still heal it," Elias said, voice trembling. "Yes," Atlas replied. "But first, we must awaken the others." The sea roared. Lightning struck the waves, and 12 pillars of light rose around Atlas. Each one bore a symbol, the marks of the ancient houses of Atlantis. The air shimmered as if the world itself were inhaling. Atlas raised his arms. "Children of the deep flame, rise once more." The lights descended into the sea. The ocean churned, the surface boiled, and from the depths, shapes began to emerge. Figures of light and coral, armored in living water. The Atlantean guardians had returned. The age of legends was no longer a memory, it was a dawn. And as dawn broke over the horizon, humanity looked upon the glowing sea, vast, alive, and breathing, and knew that the myths were never lies. They were warnings, waiting for the right moment to be remembered. The king of Atlantis had returned, and the world, once more, belonged to the tide. Chapter 11. The 12 Guardians of the Deep Flame. The ocean pulsed with ancient rhythm. Each wave was a heartbeat, each current a whisper of memory. From the deepest trenches to the shallows that kissed the coasts of every continent, the sea trembled as if preparing for a divine resurrection. Above the swelling tide stood Atlas, reborn king of Atlantis, his eyes burning with the light of 10,000 years. Around him, 12 pillars of radiance spiraled upward, their glow piercing through the storm-dark sky. "Rise, my guardians," he commanded, his voice carrying through salt and silence alike. The deep flame calls once more. The first light broke open the sea, and from it emerged a figure of serene power. Her skin shimmered with hues of dawn. Her hair flowed like ribbons of liquid gold. She held a staff carved from coral and pearl, the staff of eons. "I am Naraya, keeper of memory," she said, bowing before her king. "From the first tide to the last storm, I remember all that was lost." Atlas touched her brow gently. "Then remember, not for sorrow, but for wisdom. The world above has forgotten its beginning." The second pillar cracked apart, revealing a warrior forged from volcanic stone, veins glowing with molten fire. His voice rumbled like an earthquake beneath the waves. "Thoros, guardian of strength," he declared, slamming his trident into the seafloor. "I once held back the mountains when Atlantis sank. I will hold them again if you command it." Atlas nodded. "Strength without mercy brings ruin, but the world you shall face knows only conquest. You must teach them balance." From the third column, a swirl of lightning took form, resolving into a tall, slender figure cloaked in storm clouds. Electricity danced along her fingertips. Her eyes were twin storms, Era, mistress of tempests. "I am the voice of the sky when it breaks upon the sea. Let the winds carry your will, my king." Atlas smiled faintly. "Your rage is the song of chaos, Era, but even storms must find rhythm." Then came the fourth, a figure cloaked in twilight, neither shadow nor light. His presence bent the water around him, as though reality itself hesitated to contain him. "Kalen, warden of time," he said, his tone a deep echo. "I watched centuries turn to dust while our people slept. Time bends, yet it never forgets." Atlas regarded him solemnly. "Then keep the flow steady, Kalen. The age of men moves too swiftly. They race toward their own ending." The fifth pillar erupted in flames beneath the sea, but it did not burn. It was pure energy, flowing in crimson waves. Out of it stepped a figure, armored in scales of ember and gold. Seraphis, guardian of the flame eternal, he roared, flames curling from his shoulders. The gods may fade, but fire endures. Atlas placed his hand upon Seraphis's heart, where a faint human sorrow glowed. And so does pride. Let your fire guide, not destroy. The sixth pillar unfolded into a garden of light. Coral blossomed, and fish swam through beams of emerald radiance. From this beauty rose Lunara, the guardian of life. All that breathes within the water answers to me, she said softly. But above the surface, life cries for mercy. Atlas's eyes darkened. Then be their mercy. Remind the surface what it means to live with the world, not upon it. From the seventh pillar came a sound, a low, resonant hum that made the sea itself vibrate. A massive figure emerged, cloaked in black stone. Morvath, guardian of the abyss, he intoned. I am the shadow beneath creation. Even light needs darkness to be seen. Atlas inclined his head. Then stand as the ocean's foundation. Balance the fire and flame. The eighth light shimmered blue and silver. From it emerged Illyra, guardian of harmony. Her movements like flowing water. She carried no weapon, only a harp carved from the bones of ancient whales. Where others bring war, I bring song, she said. Let my melody calm the fury of the deep, then play for both worlds, said Atlas, for harmony cannot exist where only one voice is heard. The ninth pillar shattered like glass, and through the shards came Valiant, guardian of dreams. His eyes reflected endless stars, and his voice was a lullaby that could put even storms to sleep. I watched the dreams of mortals for ages, he said. They dream of power, of gods, of kings, but never of peace. Atlas's expression softened. Then teach them, for the dream of peace must come before its reality. The 10th light coalesced into the form of Neroth, guardian of judgment. His armor was black coral, his sword a blade of pure reflection. I am the end of all things unjust, he said coldly. When the scales tip, I bring the storm. Atlas met his gaze steadily. Then let justice be tempered by compassion. We will not become what destroyed us. From the 11th pillar came Solara, guardian of stars. Her form shimmered like the night sky, constellations drifting across her skin. When Atlantis fell, the stars wept. She whispered, "They guided your soul through the void, my king." Atlas touched her hand. Then let them guide humanity now, for even the sky must remember the sea. Finally, the 12th pillar glowed, brightest of all. From it stepped a figure neither male nor female, yet both. Their eyes were pure light. Their voice echoed with countless tones. I am Ian, the first flame. I am what remains when memory, time, and matter fade. I am the essence of Atlantis itself. The sea stilled. Even Atlas bowed his head before Ian. You return at last, Atlas said. Because you have remembered, Ian replied. And because the world must choose rebirth or ruin. The 12 stood in a circle around their king, forming a mandala of living energy. The sea blazed with color, gold, blue, crimson, violet, and the heavens mirrored it, as though the sky itself had been reborn. Guardians of the deep flame, Atlas declared, his voice rising with the tide. Our age has ended once before, buried beneath pride. But now we rise, not to conquer, but to awaken. The humans are our children, lost but not forsaken. The guardians bowed as one, their voices echoing through the sea. By the flame eternal, we serve the tide and the king. Far above, satellites recorded nothing. Ships drifted silently over calm seas, but in the dreams of humankind that night, every soul saw the same vision. A city rising from the abyss, crowned in light, and 12 figures standing at its heart. The guardians had returned. The world would never be the same again. Chapter the 12th. The War of the Two Worlds. The ocean had awakened, and the world trembled. Across every shore, the tide receded in unnatural silence. Fishermen stood in awe as the water drew back, exposing the bones of the earth from orbit. Satellites captured the impossible, a single glowing circle spreading across the Atlantic, large enough to swallow nations. At its heart, Atlantis was rising. The once lost empire now gleamed beneath the dawn. Its towers shimmering like crystal spires, its bridges glowing with veins of living light. Whales circled its perimeters as sentinels, while columns of water lifted the city higher toward the surface. And at the city's throne stood Atlas, crowned by the tide. Behind him, the 12 guardians knelt in silent readiness. Before him, the horizon of the human world. On the surface, chaos erupted. Governments launched satellites, submarines, drones, anything that could pierce the storm. Armies gathered along coasts, mistaking the miracle for invasion. The sea itself had become a barrier, deflecting radar and radio alike. In secret war rooms, the word Atlantis appeared for the first time in official briefings. Some called it a hoax. Others whispered, "The gods have returned." And in the heart of the storm, Elias Corin stood upon the highest spire of Atlantis beside Atlas himself. "They're terrified," Elias said. "They think you're here to destroy them." "Perhaps," Atlas murmured. "Perhaps they are not wrong." His voice carried the sadness of ages, the sorrow of one who had seen creation fall twice. They poisoned the sea, silenced the whales, burned the skies. They walk as if the world were theirs alone. And yet, Elias replied, "They remember your name. They built myths of you, prayed to the sea, even when they forgot why." Atlas turned his gaze toward the horizon. "Then let us see if they still remember what it means to kneel before creation." The first strike came at dawn. Human fleets, hundreds of ships armed with railguns and missiles, crossed into the Atlantic barrier. Drones plunged beneath the waves, releasing sonar pulses that shook the ocean floor. But the sea did not fight with weapons. It answered. The waters surged upward, forming colossal walls that moved like living titans. Lightning danced through the waves. The guardians took their places, each becoming an aspect of the storm. Hera, mistress of tempests, spread her arms, and the skies wept lightning. Thoros, the fire-hearted, raised his trident and split a battleship in two. Lunara, guardian of life, sent schools of glowing leviathans to intercept torpedoes mid-flight. To humankind, it was apocalypse. To Atlantis, it was awakening. Elias watched in horror. "Atlas, stop this. You're killing them." Atlas stood unmoving, his eyes glowing like the sea before a hurricane. "I warned them. They fired first. They fear what they don't understand." Elias shouted. "You were once human in spirit. Don't forget that." The king turned toward him, ancient grief in his voice. "I never was human, Elias. But I believed they could be more." Lightning cracked across the sky. Above them, Ian, the first flame, hovered, a being of pure radiance, neither angel nor god. "The balance is broken," Ian declared. "The surface rejects the sea. One must fall for the other to rise." Atlas clenched his fists. "Then perhaps the sea must reclaim what was stolen." The guardians rose as one. The ocean glowed brighter than day, the horizon split with light. But as the tide of destruction neared its peak, Illyra, guardian of harmony, stepped forward. "My king," she said softly, her harp trembling in her hands, "if we erase them, who will remember us?" Her words rippled through the sea, not as sound, but as feeling. Even the storm faltered. "Without memory," she continued, "even gods fade." Atlas looked at her, then at Elias, and for the first time since his rebirth, doubt crossed his immortal face. Far above, human pilots watched in disbelief as the waves froze, mid-motion, a perfect stillness stretching across miles. Missiles halted in the air. The storm held its breath. In that silence, Elias stepped forward. His hand glowed. The shard of the deep flame still pulsed within him. "Let me show them," he said. "Let me bridge what you cannot." Atlas's voice was low. "You would risk your life for them." "No," Elias whispered. "I would risk it for both worlds." He placed his hand upon the heart of Atlantis, the great crystal pulsing at the city's core. Energy surged through him, connecting every guardian, every ripple, every life in the ocean. His mind touched theirs, and then, impossibly, the minds of humanity. They saw what Atlantis had been, not a city of conquest, but of harmony. They saw the fall, the hubris, the fire. They saw Atlas standing against the storm, sacrificing eternity for the world. And humanity wept. The storm broke. The guardians lowered their arms. The waves subsided into peace. Atlas stood alone before the ocean's calm, staring at Ilias's lifeless body floating upon the glowing water. The shard of the deep flame dimmed and sank into the depths. "He bridged the divide," whispered Nerea, keeper of memory. "He reminded both worlds what it means to remember." Atlas closed his eyes. For the first time in millennia, the king of the deep knelt. At dawn, the ocean fell silent. The city of Atlantis began to sink once more, not in ruin, but in peace. Its towers folded into light, its streets dissolved into choral and song. "Sleep again, my people," Atlas said softly, "until the world learns to listen to the sea." The guardians bowed one last time before turning into rays of light, returning to their eternal slumber beneath the waves. And as the last spire disappeared beneath the tide, Atlas raised his gaze to the surface. "When the sea is forgotten," he murmured, "I will return." The world above never forgot. The waters grew calmer, the storms ceased, and though satellites found no trace of Atlantis, sailors still spoke of lights beneath the waves, and a voice that echoed through the deep. A voice both human and divine. The voice of Atlas, the once and future king of the sea. Epilogue: the bridge between worlds, centuries passed. Empires rose and fell like waves against the eternal shore. The world turned, and the sea, as it always had, remembered. Yet, deep beneath the quiet surface of the Atlantic, something still shimmered. Not a city, not a monument, but a memory, a pulse, a heartbeat. Atlantis was not gone. It was simply dreaming again. The world had changed. The steel cities of men had turned into gardens. Machines that once tore the sky now purified it. The oceans, once poisoned, had healed. Whales sang where ships once roared. Coral forests spread like cathedrals of light. And among the people of this new age, stories endured, stories whispered like prayers. Once there was a man who spoke to the sea. Once there was a king who ruled the tide. And between them, a bridge was born. No one remembered their names anymore. But every child, when they looked upon the horizon, felt as though something ancient was watching. not with wrath, but with sorrowful love. In the archives of the New World Library, a structure, half floating, half grown from coral, a young historian named Saren found a fragment. It was no larger than a seashell, glowing faintly blue, humming when she touched it. The inscription was eroded, but a single line remained. He who remembers unites the sea and sky. Saren stared into the shard and saw flashes, not of the present, but of the forgotten. Towers beneath the sea, beings of flame and current, and a figure standing upon the waves, his eyes silver blue, his voice calling through eternity. She gasped. Elias, ... double quotes. The name came to her as though whispered by the tide itself. For centuries, scholars had dismissed Atlantis as myth, a cautionary tale of pride and punishment. But Saren saw something different, not punishment, but remembrance. She devoted her life to decoding the artifact. Her studies led her to forgotten coastlines, deep-sea ruins, and old manuscripts that spoke of the sea that breathed light. Each discovery pointed toward the same truth. Humanity's survival had not been chance, it had been a gift. Someone or something had chosen mercy over vengeance. One day, while diving along the ruins of what was once the mid-Atlantic ridge, Saren found it, a door made of coral and obsidian, pulsing faintly with light. She placed the shard against it. The water stilled. A voice echoed through her mind, ancient and resonant. The bridge endures. She floated in the silence, heart pounding. Who are you? A memory, the voice replied. A king who waited too long. A friend who never left. The sea around her began to glow, and she saw them, faint silhouettes in the water. 12 guardians, their forms fading like echoes, surrounding a vast crystalline throne. Upon it sat Atlas, eyes closed, hands resting upon his knees. His crown was coral now, his armor overgrown with living reefs. Yet even in stillness, he radiated power. The king of the sea, Saren whispered. Atlas opened his eyes. They were calm, no longer burning with judgment, but with peace. You have healed much, he said softly. The surface no longer burns. The waters sing again. Saren nodded, trembling. We learned. We remembered. Atlas smiled faintly. Then Ilias's sacrifice was not in vain. He was real. Saren breathed. The bridge. He was more than real, Atlas said. He was human, and that made him infinite. He extended his hand. The water around them shimmered, forming visions. Elias standing beside him, the guardians bowing, the flames of Atlantis reborn. He believed in both worlds when even I could not, Atlas continued. He gave his life to unite what was never meant to meet the divine and the mortal. And what happened to him? Saren asked. Atlas's gaze drifted to the horizon of the deep. He became the current. Every wave that touches the shore carries his memory. He is the bridge between you and me. The sea began to rise softly, glowing with a pulse like a heartbeat. Saren felt the shard dissolve into her hand, fusing with her skin. You have his spirit, Atlas said. You see the world not as it is, but as it could be. Asterisk, why show me this? She asked, overwhelmed. Because the cycle will return, Atlas whispered. Every age forgets. Every flame fades. When that time comes, the world will need another bridge. He looked at her with a kindness that felt like eternity. Perhaps it will be you. The vision faded. Saren found herself floating in calm, shallow water, the ruins gone. Only the horizon remained, endless, golden, eternal. In her palm, a mark glowed faintly, the sigil of Atlantis, 12 waves encircling a single flame. The tides lapped gently at her wrist, and in their rhythm she heard a voice. Remember, years later, Siren's writings became scripture, not of worship, but of harmony. Humanity learned to listen to the ocean, not conquer it. The old world of domination gave way to coexistence. At every harbor, a monument stood, a bridge of stone and water, engraved with the same words found on the ancient shard. He who remembers unites the sea and sky. Children threw flowers into the tide on the day of remembrance, a tradition passed from generation to generation. And when the sun dipped below the horizon, the ocean would shimmer faintly as though smiling back. One night, Siren returned to the same coast where it all began. The stars reflected on the sea, and for a moment it looked like the heavens had fallen into the water. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Elias. Thank you, Atlas." And far beneath, in the heart of the ocean, the ancient city stirred just for a moment. A soft voice replied, carried by the wind and tide alike, "We never left." The sea exhaled, the stars burned brighter, and the bridge, unseen yet eternal, connected them once more.